Well, I've got the hives where I want them. It took me 5 hours to go to my south apiary, do an acylic acid treatment, load up the hives, bring them back home, and put them on top of the colonies that I have sitting here. Now, the way I do my beekeeping, the first summer I create the colony, mating nukes, get a new laying queen, and that summer they build up. It's the second summer. These bees right here just had their second summer. They produce honey. Third summer, strictly for my mating nukes. I'm going to break them down, whatever's left next spring. The more colonies you have, the more likely you're going to lose a few. So I'll be breaking these down next spring and making mating nukes. They're not going to make honey for me next year. I only do that their second summer. These right here, majority of all these are new this year, 2020. Next year, 2021, they'll be making my honey and making extra bees for my new colonies they're creating in 2021. Now, if I get a queen that makes it to the third summer, they will strictly stay here. And eventually, if I get too many mating nukes, I'm going to be putting them in other apiaries. But right now, you never assume how many you're going to have the next year. I've got 99 colonies right now. And I can get quite a few in that room if they're too small the winter outside. All of these here are new. Yeah, they're all new. I've got a lot of new ones. And the goal this winter is not to lose too many of my new colonies, because I'm going to hopefully sell some honey next year. But you never assume what you're going to do. And this right here is one of the best books I ever bought. And I had his attitude towards beekeeping before I even bought this. I did Kirk Webster's on non-treatment methods because I didn't like the way the treatments for varroa mites were harmful to the bees. So I followed Kirk Webster, and he happens to be out in Vermont. And by reading this book here, Ross Conrad lives in Vermont, and he worked for one of the largest beekeepers in Vermont that didn't take their bees out of the state. Vermont is not a big crop farming state. Kirk Webster has his bees near those other bees, and there aren't very many varroa mites. So therefore, he didn't have any problems with varroa mites. So I almost lost all of my colonies my third winter by following Kirk Webster. But by then, acylic acid was commonly used, and I went ahead and I tried the formic acid first. You gotta look at my videos. It worked one winter. The second winter, it didn't work, didn't kill a single varroa mite. And every time I used it, it killed 10% of my queens. So I switched to acylic acid, and that works great, but you got to do it several times, the vaporizing, because it doesn't kill the varroa mites in the cat brood. No, I spent 5 hours today moving those colonies here because I love my honeybees. They're like family to me. It hurts me to not see them in a long time. I was happy to go see them and load them on the truck. Ross Conrad loves bees too, but I read quite a bit of this book, but there's certain places I skip. And I happened to read this the other day, Theft and Vandalism. He had some colonies sitting somewhere out, I don't know, woods or whatever, field. And he came and checked his colonies in the spring, and he saw bullet holes in the hives, and he assumed that they were put there from the previous fall's hunting season. So, in other words, he went through all winter without checking his colonies. I could never do that. I could never even leave my colonies somewhere far away from me and not check them. It bothered me this summer not to go over 2 weeks not checking those colonies. I'm going to continue to bring everything home for the winter, and if I end up having rows and rows of colonies or hives out here, that's what I'm going to do. They got to face the south. I could have some out there. They got to get sunshine during the winter. I know they're not all going to fit in here, but the only ones that have to go in here are my new colonies. So I don't see myself ever making more than 100 new colonies a year. So let me show you. I'm still feeding these because it's warmer in here. And November is supposed to warm up. It's almost the end of October, and November's going to warm up. These colonies out here, the ones I just put on top, I've had the opportunity to lift several of them. And if I had an ink pen and a notepad, I could have wrote down every one of them that was a little lighter, but I didn't think about that. And I can't remember now. But what I'm going to do is get a scaffold. I'm going to buy a scaffold or whatever. I'm going to buy a scaffold, a narrow baker scaffold to fit in there, and it has wheels, and it'll bring me up to the level of those hives, and I'm going to check them. And if I need to feed SERP during the month of November, it's going to be warm enough that I think I could feed SERP, but I do have frames of honey. Right now, I'm not going to open them for a while, let them calm down. More than likely, about 5 days probably, next week sometime, and it'll warm up and I'll be able to get to check them. The bees that were pissed off today were the ones that were underneath because they didn't really want to have an upstairs neighbor. So they're riled up too. So I'm going to leave them alone. I got to put this fence up here to keep the, see? Believe it or not, duck seat insulation board. Yeah, you do, don't you? Naughty. Yep. They copied the chickens. They saw the chickens eating it, and they thought, hey, delicious. So I got to get that fence back up. Thank you.